Good afternoon to you. 506 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump last night on Newsmax following his arrest, booking, mugshot.
Terrible experience. I came in, I was treated very nicely, but it is what it is. I took a mugshot, which I never heard the words mugshot. Didn't teach me that at the Wharton School of Finance. And I have to go through a process. It's election interference. You know that better than anybody. You cover it so well. You just did a fantastic job, I have to tell you, for the listeners. Fantastic job, Greg. But it's a very sad experience, and it's a very sad day for our country.
A very sad day for our country. We've had a lot of these. Mike Davis joins us now. He's the founder and president of the Article 3 Project. He's been watching all of this. Mike, good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And Mike, what do you make of it?
Well, it's part of the Democrat lawfare and election interference we've been talking about for the last year, Vince, going back to the Mar-a-Lago raid last August for the non-crime of a former president having his presidential records, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. You had the Manhattan DA, the Soros-funded Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, indicting Trump for the non-crime of a businessman settling a nuisance claim. Now you have both Jack Smith and Fani Willis, this Fulton County buffoon DA down in Atlanta, indicting Trump for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which, before Trump was only illegal in third world Marxist hellholes. It's allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. It's allowed by the First Amendment. Democrats objected to Republican wins in 1968, 2000, 2004, and 2016. But, it's like, I keep saying this, it's like the Kavanaugh confirmation. The Democrats are really overplaying their hand, and it's going to backfire spectacularly on them like it did during the Kavanaugh confirmation. They couldn't just stick to Christine Blasey Ford, who was lying through her teeth, but she was the most credible of the 6 allegations. They brought in 5 more bogus allegations, and each one cheapened the one before that. They're doing the same thing here. They couldn't just stick to the Mar-a-Lago presidential records dispute. It's clearly covered by the Presidential Records Act, not the Espionage Act, but that was their most plausible case to go after Trump. And they brought in 3 more indictments and maybe more.
So you think people like Fani Willis and Alvin Bragg, they're the Julie Swetnicks of this story?
I think Fani Willis is Julie Swetnick, maybe, and Alvin Bragg is Michael Avenatti, or vice versa. I'm not sure, but they're both just total buffoon Democrat prosecutors who are in these Democrat hellholes. And so, back in Manhattan or in the hellhole of Atlanta, they probably are getting high praise from their whack job constituents. But this doesn't play well for the rest of the Democrat Party across America. It actually is going to hurt Democrats. It's going to hurt Biden. It's going to put President Trump back in the White House. And they're going to be stunned on November 5th, 2024, when this backfires on them spectacularly. It's going to be bigger than 2016.
Mike Davis, one lesson from all of this is that these prosecutors, these agents of the state, are so tyrannical and lawless. What are the consequences for just trampling the Constitution in pursuit of a political agenda?
Well, Trump's going to win on these cases ultimately, and it may require getting to the Supreme Court, and it may not happen before the presidential election, but the consequence is going to be on November 5th, 2024. And I will say this to the House Republicans and state attorneys general, Republican state attorneys general, to the extent that there are any Republican DAs out there, they need to toughen up. The reason Democrats have been so emboldened over the last year to indict a former president for the first time ever, let alone 4 different times, who happens to be the leading presidential candidate, is because they feel almost no blowback. There's no consequences. And House Republicans can fix this immediately. Open an impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden for his corruption and Merrick Garland for his cover-up. Open it up for their weaponization of the Justice Department. They need to have aggressive oversight. Issue subpoenas for documents. Issue subpoenas to have these people come in for depositions. Have public hearings constantly. It's a zero-sum game. If these Democrats are on offense, they're not on defense. And if they're on defense, they're not on offense. And we need to have them on defense. We need to have them hiring their own lawyers and being on defense for their real crimes, their real weaponization. And our side is so weak about this stuff. I praised Jim Jordan for sending that letter to Alvin Bragg. I stopped criticizing him for that after he did that. I praised him again for sending that letter to Fani Willis. We need to be doing a lot more than letters. We need to be doing hearings. We need to be doing subpoenas. We need to be doing depositions. We need to be doing impeachment inquiries. House Republicans need to include appropriation writers. Two of them. No federal funds may be used to prosecute a major presidential candidate on or before November 5th, 2024, and any state or local jurisdiction that prosecutes a major presidential candidate on or before November 5th, 2024 loses all federal funding. We have not had an indictment of a former president ever. We have not had an indictment of a leading presidential candidate ever. This is unprecedented by the Democrats, and Republicans can't normalize this. We need to fight back.
Also, as a basic principle, the obligation for dealing with presidential wrongdoing, alleged presidential wrongdoing, is the impeachment process. In the wake of the events of January 6, 2020, Donald Trump was impeached and then acquitted in the United States Senate. Mike Davis, this is something that's already been litigated at the exactly at the place that the founders expected it to be.
Absolutely. And also, if you look at federal statute, these state and local prosecutors cannot prosecute federal officials for what they do within their official capacity. And they are charging President Trump for ordering his vice president to object to the election. President Trump cannot do that as a private citizen. He can only do that as the president of the United States. Therefore, he has presidential immunity, and there is Supreme Court precedent on point on this case. And you're going to see, I hope, President Trump filing a motion to dismiss on both of these January 6 cases, both both Fani Willis's and Jack Smith's. And if the Michigan AG, if the Arizona AG who sold the election out there, if they think they're going to file lawsuits on January 6th, there are motions to dismiss that are almost certainly coming. Number one, to the extent you're saying Trump did this as president, presidential immunity, it's the outer perimeter of his presidential power. There's clear Supreme Court case law on point. And to the extent that this is within his personal capacity as a presidential candidate, it's First Amendment protected redress of government. They're not alleging that he incited the riot. They're not alleging that he extorted a politician and said that I'm going to, go kill your son if you don't do this. There's no allegation whatsoever. The political process is messy, right? It's boorish at times. That doesn't mean it's criminal.
One of the things we saw in the wake of the 2020 election is Donald Trump file a number of legal challenges in the variety of the states about the way that the elections were conducted. And we didn't see much appetite for judges to seriously take on his challenges. In fact, we saw a tremendous amount of cowardice from the judicial branch around the country. Do you think there is enough courage, common sense courage among judges in order to right this ship in the country?
Well, I hope so. But, I'll tell you what President Trump and his legal team need to do this time. They can't wait until the election is over to file their legal challenges. They need to get injunctions in place ahead of time that these state election officials cannot unilaterally change election laws by fiat. They can't blame COVID. It looks like they're trying to come up with the COVID excuse again so they can blame Biden's failing economy on COVID and use COVID to steal the next election. They can't use COVID again to unilaterally change election laws. If you want to change election laws in this country as it relates to the presidential election, it has to be through state legislatures, that they pass the laws, the governor signs them, or it comes from Congress. Congress passes the laws, the president signs them. You can't just have unelected bureaucrats say, okay, we're going to get rid of signature verification. We're going to get rid of election observers. We're going to mass mail ballots, live ballots out to these lists of voters, even like college students who have moved several years prior, and these live ballots pile up, and then you get rid of signature verification, and you get rid of election observers, and that is just a recipe for fraud, right? If there's spoliation of evidence in litigation, meaning if you hide evidence from the other side, you can presume that evidence was bad for you if you are hiding it. And I don't know why the same thing can't be said about, getting rid of election observers, the people who are supposed to gather evidence for these elections.
Mike Davis, should Donald Trump prevail in the face of all of this election meddling the left is undertaking right now, and become president of the United States again, how clear of a priority should be reforming our justice system be for him, and what should that look like?
Well, I always joke that I'm going to be the acting attorney general during my 3-week reign of terror as Trump's acting attorney general. I will fire everyone on day one and indict everyone on day one and deport and detain and Gitmo or the DC gulag, and I will, or maybe the Atlantic jail. It sounds like a real hellhole, so that'd be a good place for the Democrats, and recommend pardons. But look, Republicans need to get serious about taking on the permanent government bureaucracy. And what needs to happen is that the FBI in particular and the CIA in particular and these intel agencies and law enforcement agencies, instead of just having one politically appointed director at the top and then having these, Andrew McCabe's and Peter Strzok's types who are burrowed into these to the top layers of the management, what needs to happen is that at least the top 3 layers of the FBI, the director, the deputy director, and the assistant directors, including the special agents in charge of the D.C. and New York and other key field offices, need to be president appointed and Senate confirmed. They say that it will make it political. No, it would actually make it more accountable. They're already political. And the same thing with the CIA and the other intel agencies and law enforcement agencies. Is that at least the top 3 levels need to be accountable to the American people through our elected president.
And one of the other pieces here that always it just leaves my jaw dropped is the extent to which the people who are now indicting Donald Trump are such explicit political actors. I mean, everybody on David Weiss's team, the donors to Democrats and the Biden campaign specifically, if you're dealing with prosecuting Biden's top political opponent, you should not be anywhere near a case if you are a donor to the president's campaign.
I mean, remember that before Jack Smith got appointed the special counsel, his wife was a donor to the Obama campaign. His wife produced a video for Michelle Obama. Jack Smith got appointed to a senior job, the head of the public integrity section by Eric Holder in the Obama Justice Department. I mean, these are all political actors on the original team from Main Justice, from the counter-espionage unit. They had a lawyer on there. And this is on Jay Bratt's team before he became counselor to Jack Smith. Jay Bratt is a total goon who inappropriately tried to threaten one of a co-defendant's lawyers. If the co-defendant didn't turn on Trump, the lawyer was looking at a D.C. judgeship, and allegedly this Jay Bratt threatened this judgeship if his client didn't turn on Trump. It's just highly inappropriate goon material stuff out of Jay Bratt. But they had a Senate Democrat staffer, a Democrat partisan staffer from the Senate Judiciary Committee, worked for 2 Senate Democrats as one of the lead attorneys on the Mar-a-Lago case before I exposed her and she got chased off the case. But that's the problem with Obama is the one who radically transformed the Justice Department, the career people at the Justice Department, along with the CIA. He's the one who politicized the law enforcement agencies and the intel agencies, and we've never recovered from that. We need a house cleaning. Like I said, we need to get rid of these people at least the top 3 layers of each one of these intel and law enforcement agencies, and replace them with politically appointed people who are presidentially appointed, Senate confirmed, and accountable to the American people.
Yeah, big time. Obama at the root of so much of this. Mike Davis, founder and president of the Article 3 Project. Always good to talk to you, sir. Look forward to doing that again soon. Let's go to the phones. We've got Michael calling in from Woodbridge. That's line 1. Michael, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, Vince, just follow up on to what Mike Davis was talking about. We got 2 choices here. You either embrace the precedent. They've now set a precedent. We can go after them for exactly the same things. You switch out Donald Trump's name off of that charging sheet and put Stacey Abrams' name in there and tell me that she doesn't qualify for the first 8 charges. And that's what you do. There should be 1,000 indictments going out across this country today from Republican prosecutors across this country today to force them, push this into a court, get the court to say, you can't do this. This is crazy. Or the court says, yes, you can. And by God, you burn them down.
What I'm thinking here, Michael, is
according to their rules.
Michael, you're totally right. And what Fani Willis is doing in Georgia is, in the way that she's gone after so many people with and around Trump, is she's accusing them of a RICO violation, that they're an organized crime ring. Well, that's turnabout is fair play here. Let's establish that all of these Democrats have violated RICO laws by organizing a criminal intent to steal our elections, by trying to destroy their political opponent using the government.
Here's a simple one for you, Vince.
Yeah.
Here's a simple one for you. You take that super cut that we love to play. You've got it. I've got it. Everybody I know's got it. The one of the Democrats talking about the election was stolen. It was stolen. Obviously, it was stolen. And you charge every single one of those people in that super cut with conspiracy to defraud the United States of America under color of law.
Yeah.
That's an enhancement charge. That's an enhancement charge. I don't know why we're not using under color of law. James Comey, under color of law. McCabe, under color of law. These were not street vendors who did weird things or crooked things or criminal things. These were law enforcement officers at the highest levels of law enforcement in the United States of America, and not a damn one of them was sent to jail under color of law.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, so you got to take the weapon out of their hands and crack them over the head with it, metaphorically speaking. Thank you, Michael. It's a smart point. Good to talk to you. All right, hold on. I've got more of your calls ahead. I've got some breaking news for you on bribes headed to the Biden family. You're going to want to hear about this and a whole lot more on the Vince Coglianese Show. Well, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. Pretty amazing stuff coming out in the last 24 hours. Not just Donald Trump's mugshot. The media reaction to it has been something else. Over on MSNBC, they were throwing a parade. There was a big victory parade. It's like the greatest thing ever happened. Here is Joy Reid reacting to this overnight.
I can tell you, for me, it is, when I moved back to New York, one of the mugshots that sit with me, I still remember that he made 5 teenagers my age take a mugshot. Yeah. That he wanted them not just take a mugshot, he wanted them dead.
Say what that case was.
And this was the Central Park 5 case, the exonerated 5, and they were my age. Yeah. So as a teenager living in New York, I've said it before, this is the reason I never watched The Apprentice. Yeah. I despised Donald Trump because he, to me, signified the rich white guy in Manhattan that absolutely hated and despised me, that hated and despised my cousins, my friends, everyone we knew, that called us wilding just because we were in the park, that said we can't be free to walk around in the street, that said when Patrick Dorismond got killed by an off-duty police officer, he's no choir boy.
All right, so she hated the rich white guy in Manhattan, she said. And there's a little bit of a fact check here. Joe Concha, our buddy Joe Concha, looked at this. And as you notice, she said that as a teenager living in New York, she never watched The Apprentice, which is a weird thing to say because Reid is 54 years old. The Apprentice aired while she was in her 30s and 40s, so she wasn't a teenager. She was raised in Colorado until she was 17, and then she moved to Brooklyn. She attended Harvard undergrad, and her net worth is currently $4 million. What is she talking about? She's that girl is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, Joy Reid. And, so last night going on and on about, the rich white guy, Donald Trump, and how she didn't watch The Apprentice when she was a teenager. It's just so crazy. Let's take a phone call here. We've got Mark calling in from Alexandria, line 2. Mark, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. I'll try and make it quick, but I got a lot to say. Mr. Davis is right on, except he's forgetting one thing, and I haven't heard this yet, and I am shocked that more people aren't on. What I'm about to say is Congress can eliminate the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia and that appellate court. Congress makes all the inferior courts. Supreme Court's really the only court set out in the Constitution. I'm a member of that court. It used to be a prestigious court. It's run by a bunch of Democrat clowns now. I'm going to call out 2 judges specifically. Judge Mehta. who, when sentencing a January 6th defendant, said, well, certainly 16 other federal judges couldn't be wrong about election fraud. Well, exactly what Mr. Davis said. Where is the evidence? It was destroyed. How can you present evidence that states destroyed, such as the mail-in ballots with the addresses compared to the registrations? This court also just gave us a Supreme Court justice who appears to be racist and also doesn't know the definition of a female. And
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
It's time to do away with this court. Those judges, not all of them, just pretty much the Democrats, can go back to being the mediocre lawyers they were before the mediocre judges they became. Split the work between Maryland Fed Circuit and Virginia. And, of course, we'll need the Senate and the president to do that. But that would be day one.
This is a clever idea. So the U.S. court, district court, the D.C. court, you think about what D.C. has. We don't give D.C. senators, we don't give them actual voting congressmen. Why do we have courts dedicated for Washington, D.C.?
And to think that a conservative can get a fair trial in D.C., these judges say that, they're insane, Vince. They're meant, if they really believe that, these are the same judges that actually are responsible for January 6th because they let the FBI walk in there with all of this garbage, rubber stamped it, and that man could never run his presidency. They should be ashamed of themselves. They won't resign. They have to be mentally ill for their conduct. There's no other explanation.
Mark, did you say that you worked with the U.S. District Court?
I'm still a member of that, and I'm thinking about how I have to quit and do it eloquently to make my point, because every time I think about what those judges are doing, they should not be allowed anywhere near the Constitution.
So, I'm sorry, just to be clear, when you say you're a member of the court, does that mean you're a judge?
Just leave it at not a judge on that federal bench.
Okay.
Just leave it at that.
Got it. But in other words, your judgments are educated and familiar. I mean, you're very familiar with this topic. And so you think that Congress should dispatch the District of Columbia's U.S. District Court, get rid of it?
Yes. It's hard to impeach these judges. It's not hard to get rid of the court. And Congress could do that. And, of course, again, we'd have to have the House, the Senate, and the presidency in one fell swoop of a pen, and they can go, like I said, they can go back to be mediocre lawyers.
Mark, is it your impression that other judges are embarrassed by what is happening in our justice system, in particular with the U.S. court, the D.C. court, excuse me?
Unquestionable. And obviously, a lot of them can't say that. And as a judge, you kind of have to be careful to just speak in generalities. But if I were actually a sitting judge on that court, I would be infuriated and make my voice known every day. They aren't special. These are people. These judges have to understand that they only exist because us people allow it to exist. The Constitution's a piece of paper, and unless we all continue to agree to abide by that piece of paper, we become Venezuela, we become North Korea.
Is it possible is there a role here for, say, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts to step up and throttle these courts for abusing their power and not serving people well?
Not really, but Judge Roberts, the other thing we need to do is a whole other story, is get rid of this FISA court nonsense. But that's probably the only thing. Justice Roberts can do. He obviously would yield a strong voice in telling them, to maybe, I don't know, follow the Constitution.
Of course. Yeah. All right. Mark.
Concept.
Yeah, what a novel concept. Mark, I really appreciate your phone call. Please call back, sir. Thank you for that insight.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. All right, let me move on now to some breaking news for you. There is reporting today, this is courtesy of Fox News' Brian Kilmeade, but apparently he just concluded an interview, or at least it's now being aired, portions of it on Fox, and it'll air in its entirety tomorrow, Saturday, on, I guess Brian has a weekend show. And the New York Post describes it this way. Here's the headline on the piece. Fired Ukraine prosecutor Viktor Shokin says he believes Bidens were bribed. Well, Viktor Shokin, we haven't heard from him in a long time, have we? Dateline Washington, former Ukraine Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin says in a new interview set to air Saturday night that he believes, but he lacks direct evidence, that President Biden and his son Hunter received bribes in exchange for forcing him out of office in early 2016. Shokin says, quote, I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my personal conviction is that, yes, this was the case. They were being bribed, he told Kilmeade in the excerpt of the interview released Friday. Quote, and the fact that Joe Biden gave away $1 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption? The Post points out that Shokin is a central figure in this controversy over alleged Biden family influence peddling, which could morph into a House impeachment inquiry as early as next month. The former prosecutor is rarely seen in Western media, and his perceived credibility or lack thereof could dramatically shape efforts to impeach and remove the president from office. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see what the left's response to this will be right away, which is this guy was corrupt, and that's why Biden got him fired, and he was doing the bidding of the Western world, and everything was on the up and up, and that $1 billion was held up for just cause. He was so corrupt, so why wouldn't he be corrupt now? The guy who was fired, why wouldn't he then come forward now and say, yeah, Biden was bribed? But the issue, of course, is that it's not just Viktor Shokin who's saying this. You have trusted sources, a trusted source to the FBI, one that the FBI was paying for some time, who has laid all of this out. And remember that FD 1023 form that Congress had to fight so hard to get a hold of from FBI Director Christopher Wray. And he said, yeah, you did have Burisma bribing the Bidens, Hunter and Joe. That Zlochevsky, Mykola Zlochevsky, the owner of Burisma, recorded any number of phone calls. There's a specific number. I think it's 17. It's 15 calls with Hunter, 2 with Joe, discussing the terms of the bribe and what the deliverable was. And the deliverable was to get Zlochevsky fired. You have testimony from Devin Archer. He just appeared before Congress. And in his testimony, and then subsequently in his interview with Tucker Carlson, he laid out how Hunter arranged to have the heads, have Zlochevsky, the Burisma guy, get on the phone with Joe Biden. At points, Devin Archer describing that as DC, but making crystal clear that he knew it was Biden, that it was Biden himself, Joe Biden himself. So, you know, Shokin is now back. Viktor Shokin has made an appearance here. Kind of fascinating. I have some audio for you of, here's a clip. This is from the interview with Brian Kilmeade, the former Ukrainian prosecutor fired at the behest of Joe Biden, who withheld $1 billion in taxpayer funding for Ukraine, unless that occurred, and then bragged about it. Here is a piece of Viktor Shokin talking about this.
I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my firm personal conviction is that, yes, this was the case. They were being bribed. The fact that Joe Biden gave away $1 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption?
Yeah, so huge. This seems like a big addition to this story. We finally hear from Viktor Shokin. I'm still waiting to hear from Tony Bobulinski again, wondering when he's going to appear before Congress and testify, hopefully publicly, so we can all consume it. But Bobulinski laid out not what was happening in Ukraine, but instead what was happening in China, as Joe Biden was slated for 10% of the earnings there in China with CEFC Energy. They said 10% for the big guy. Tony Bobulinski commenting in the lead up to the 2020 election that he was confident that that was Joe Biden. He said 1,000% certainty that the big guy is Joe Biden. Bobulinski speaks, of course, from his personal experience, having met with Joe. Hunter had to bring Bobulinski to dinner with Joe Biden so that Joe could vet Tony Bobulinski to make sure that he would be a good business partner for the Biden family. That's Tony's testimony. On the record, credible, made multiple times now. He even spoke to the FBI after an hours-long conversation with them. They never got back to him again. That's a familiar story, too. All right, so that's the update. Viktor Shokin now making public statements, and I've got a whole lot more for you. But the senile current office holder of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, well, actually, he's in Lake Tahoe still, hanging out at Tom Steyer's mansion. He was asked today about the mugshot. Listen to it, amazing. So from Lake Tahoe, Biden is being booed so loudly in this, it's actually hard to hear him. I'm not sure who the group of people around him are, but they don't like him. That's what we can take away.
Mr. President.
I've been talking to the UAW. Obviously, I'm concerned. I think that there should be a circumstance where the jobs that are being displaced, replaced with new jobs, they should go to the first choice should go to the UAW member who had the job.
Talking about union jobs.
The salary should be commensurate.
Have you seen Donald Trump's mugshot yet? Mr. President, are you worried at all about that?
I did see it on television.
What'd you think?
Handsome guy. Wonderful guy.
He was asked, did you see Trump's mugshot? He laughed, so you can hear the boos still in the background. And he said, I did see it on television. They said, what'd you think? And he said, handsome guy. Wonderful guy. And then he giggled again. So that's Joe Biden's reaction to, his party's corruption, his party's abuse of our judicial system. Handsome guy, says Joe. Meanwhile, there's Captain Deplorable, remember him? Sean Farish, who does this excellent Trump impression, he released his own clip as Donald Trump reacting to the mugshot.
Well, they took my mugshot. It's a big, beautiful mugshot. Look at it. I call it the Mona Lisa of mugshots. It's incredible. Look at that. It's like my phone calls. It's a perfect mugshot. So perfect and so beautiful. You know, many people say that they have a good side and a bad side. I only have one side. It's called my great side. They got my great side with this mugshot. It's a beautiful picture of a very handsome guy.
He just keeps going. He's really talented, that guy. I had a great time interviewing him when we met him at CPAC. He was just a hoot and a smart, really smart guy. Let me take a phone call here. I got Scott calling in on line 3 from Castleton, Virginia now. Scott, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.